Hello, fungal friends. Not seeing the fungi for the forest. I want to explain you about fungal functions in Bridle Trail State Park in South Kirkland, Washington State. And I can't just talk about fungi. I guess I have to talk about mushrooms as well. So mushrooms are the fruiting bodies of fungi, and talking about mushrooms invokes all kinds of reactions in people. And there's the people who, when just thinking of mushrooms, there's fear, you know, as William Hayes in the late 1800s termed it the vegetable vermin, though he was a friend of mushrooms. He wrote a book about mushrooms in England, but he also attested British society fungophobia, the fear of mushrooms. Don't touch that mushroom. You touch that mushroom. Wash your hands. Wash your hands. Don't put them in your mouth. You might die. All that kind of craziness about mushrooms is absolutely irrational. No mushroom ever is going to kill you by just touching it. Just like holding hands won't get you pregnant. You have to ingest the mushroom. Then it's dangerous. And there's actually only very few mushrooms out here that will kill you. Organ failure. This is what a mushroom has to induce, and that's a very serious thing. But there's only about a dozen deadly mushrooms. So not so much to worry. Of course, if a kid or dog eats anything you don't know, it's something to worry about. But the likelihood it is deadly is very small. And here, two deadly mushrooms, the false skullcap that grows on wood, quite common, and luckily still very rare, the invasive species from Europe, the death cap, seen in Bellevue. Yes, it's around, but it's still very rare. Now, hunting for good edible mushrooms, as many of us like to do, whose life is not undermined by fungophobia, we have to watch out. Like the Western matsutake, a choice edible with a very unique taste, a touch of cinnamon, firm structure, has a really, really dangerous look-alike. And these mushrooms, you have to tell them apart. And if it wasn't for that unique scent of the matsutake, we would not tell people to hunt matsutake. But that scent of the matsutake with a hint of cinnamon, that will equip you with the knowledge not to fall for this really poisonous deceiver. And then, of course, some of us, many of us, know that mushrooms are really a divine delicacy. I mean, just such great tastes in there, that rich, savory, umami taste, all kinds of different structures, just like there's all the diversity with all the vegetables. We have great diversity in our edible mushrooms, and we have such abundance, especially when it comes to chanterelles. No place on this globe has as many edible chanterelles as we do, and such big chanterelles. And the prince, a suburban mushroom, might pop up in many backyards here. Very tasty, nice almond aroma. Just a heavy metal concentrator, so you can't overdo it, just like when you have to be careful about eating fish. But mushrooms will provide you with all kinds of vitamins, minerals, rare minerals, have high fiber content that's excellent cleaning out your system. And when we don't get caught by the fact that mushrooms have 90% water, so when we cook them, we often reduce it. And if you look at the dry content, mushrooms have 30% protein, 20 to 40% protein, really rich source of protein. Such a great alternative to meat without the negative side effects of red meat, like, you know, colon cancer, always directly related to eating red meat. The carbon footprint of especially beef, so bad, while mushrooms, carbon positive, you know. You got to have a forest to have them. And then lots of great medical implications about eating mushrooms, like that recent study out of Singapore. If you eat twice a week mushrooms, your chances of mild cognitive impairment is reduced by 50%, just eating twice mushrooms a week. So do it. Now also, moving beyond the edibility here, fungi are really the alpha and omega in the life of trees. I don't want to get too biblical on you here, but all the trees cooperate with fungi and need them. So when they start out, fungi will give them a hand. In the picture, you see actually only 3 roots under this little pine seedling. The rest is all mycelium, is the mushroom helping the roots, multiplying their surface just incredibly, accessing nutrients and water the roots themselves don't get to. And then when the trees get old, mushrooms will undermine the stability of the wood. They will digest the lignin and cellulose and weaken the tree, and the tree will come down because of mushrooms feeding on the wood. Now, interestingly, people thought that mushrooms are part of the plant kingdom. And 50 years ago, they finally got their own kingdom. And the kingdom of fungi is actually closer related to animals than to plants. One example is insects and mushrooms share chitin for structural solidity. So there is no photosynthesis capacity in fungi. Just like animals, they need to feed on other organisms. And the main organism of a fungus, and of course there's incredible diversity, but to generalize it, is a system of fine white threads we call hyphae. And these hyphae make up a mycelium. And hyphae are made up of hollow string-like structures, and each is one cell white. And the mushrooms grow where there's food. So there needs to be moisture, the right temperature, and the mycelium will grow and look for food. And if there's food, then it will digest it. And for digesting, it will release enzymes outside and absorb the broken down chemicals. So really a different approach to us. And that's part of the reason why mushrooms have just an incredible immune system, because they're completely exposed. I mean, there's millions of other microbes in the soil that would love to feed on the protein-rich mycelium, and the mushrooms can't run. So they have to defend themselves. They got to have a really strong immune system, and that often can benefit the human immune system. So this is basically the root of why medicinal mushrooms are so fascinating and have so many possible usages. Not enough research, total lack of research in many regards, but we have already probably 24 species have double-blind studies. So there is a lot of good work. And of course, everybody knows about penicillinum and cyclosporin when you get an organ transplant, all fungally derived pharmaceuticals. Now, the fungal lifestyle, we talk about 3 main lifestyles. So saprobic, or in the old days saprophytic, these are the fungi that break down dead tissue, leaves, needles, wood, and we are most familiar with them when it comes to edible mushrooms, because these are the ones you can easily grow and you have in the supermarket. Button mushrooms, oysters, shiitake, these are the mushrooms that are saprobic. Then we have parasitic mushrooms, which we have way less experience or exposure to. And these are fungi that live off living organisms, like the famous zombie ants, where the fungus infects an insect, or here down below, a fungus that feeds on another mushroom. And then we have the symbiotic mushroom, which is really the interesting story when it comes to the forest ecosystem. And these are mushrooms like that bolete in the upper right corner that work together with the trees. As I mentioned before, they feed the trees and the trees feed them. And here you have a short graphic where you see on the left conifer, and around it maybe a fly agaric and a bolete, and the mycelium of these mushrooms is directly connected to the root system. The trees have special root endings where they connect to these to the mycelium, and where there is water and nutrients exchanged. Up to 80% of nitrates and phosphates the tree needs come from the mushrooms, and the tree supplies incredible amount of sugars. Up to 60% of the sugars the tree produces goes to the mushrooms. So, I mean, this symbiosis is just fundamental for the health of the forest and the health of the plants. And we have a couple different systems. The arbuscular myco mushroom rhiza root system works especially with the red cedars and the maples in our ecosystems. And ectomycorrhizals work with all the conifers and cottonwood, red alder, madrone, hazelnuts. These are examples all out of Bridle Trail. And here a couple fungi typical for the ectomycorrhizal fungi. Panther amanita on the top left, one of the toxic mushrooms, not deadly for humans, but it can kill dogs, sadly. Lacaria amethystina orientalis, the mushroom with the longest species name, beautiful purple mushroom, edible, but not highly esteemed. Then we have a bolete, a Serracomellis on the lower right, Atropurpureus now. In the middle, lower middle is a truffle-like Rhizopogon, an underground ectomycorrhizal fungi. On the lower left, a purple Inosabe, a fiber cap that is a poisonous mushroom. Lots of diversity in the Inosabe. Most of them are little brown mushrooms. Then here's some saprobic mushrooms, the red-belted conch in the center, and down below the artist conch, big, hardy, perennial mushrooms, very interesting as medicinal mushrooms, many of them very bitter. Just like in the old days, it's bitter, it's gotta be good medicine, right? And you see the great variety here in shapes. Jelly fungus, bird's nest fungus, mucronella, and then oyster-like Woodticea on the right, and the earpig mushroom on the left. Interesting in connection with the saprobic mushroom, especially in bridle trails, is the laminated root rot. So here a mushroom that's not named for its fruiting body, but for its devastating impact on the forest ecosystem. So the fruiting bodies are actually quite rare and hardly seen, but the mushroom, the mycelium, can be observed in the roots of the blown over trees, and big problem for forestry, but great agent for rejuvenation of the forest, for diversity. Light comes in, species diversity, and animal, plants, fungi, all profit from the rejuvenation of the forest. And then here a couple saprobic mushrooms in the center, the super tasty gray shaggy parasol. And these saprobic mushrooms, they always grow in the biomass, great variety. So it's quite easy not to see the fungi for the forest, right? All these functions in there. So I just want to summarize here. Yes, mushrooms always generate interest in people, a lot of emotional reactions. You always can touch a mushroom without worrying. You have to ingest to have problems. The rate of deadly mushrooms is extremely low. Yes, there's more mushrooms that upset your system, but you don't have to worry about your life when you see a mushroom. Mushrooms are extremely nutritious, very rich source of vitamins with a very low carbon footprint, great alternative, besides being so tasty and savory. And we are closer related to fungi than to plants. So and just like animals, fungi feed on dead plants or other dead organisms. The body is the mycelium. The mushroom is only the reproductive organs, and not even all fungi produce a mushroom. And they're a really essential part of the forest. They do manage the ecosystem. They will feed little trees, keep them in the shade alive till a big tree falls down, and then the little tree is ready to go. So incredible function there, intelligence in the mycelium, working, exchanging nutrients between not related species, making sure that the forest as a whole has a good future, working together. Very fascinating story. And so they're not only recycling biomass, as you might have been told in high school, they actively distribute nutrients and will exchange their sugars for phosphate, nitrates, and water. I hope this opened some new perspectives to you and you enjoyed that. I want to thank especially the Bridle Trail Park Foundation, Jim Ekman and Kelly Goat, who asked me to make that video for them, and check out their webpage. And I'm here, Daniel Winkler. My webpage is mushrooming.com. I do organize mushroom travels and mushrooms excursion, and I have several publications on edible mushrooms, and work on a book on Pacific Northwest edible mushrooms right now as well. So all the best. Thank you so much.